The New York Times is out with this new polling this morning showing the race is in a literal dead heat, not plus or minus, but in a dead heat, less than 2 weeks to go. What would you warn voters about what to expect, knowing how tight this may be on election night?
Let's be very clear. If we go back to the 2020 election, nearly 160 million people voted, okay? The likelihood this is going to be called on election night is 0.0. Now, if you're a betting person, like I think Berman is, but if you are a betting person, Sarah, you would take the over. Don't bet on don't bet on the players in the game, because we don't know. It's such a toss-up. But what we do know, or at least we're led to believe, because of what we know from past history, we know how difficult it is to count all these numbers. It's going to be a few days before we really know who's going to be the next president of the United States.
Let me just throw this out there as a starting point here. In the New York Times Siena College poll, which shows the race tied, it focused on the not fully decided voters, which is a little different than undecided, but not fully decided. They say 15% are not fully decided. And I think we have that. We can throw that up on the screen so people can see the actual number. And among that group right now, Kamala Harris is leading 42% to 32%. It was essentially tied a couple weeks ago. So that not fully decided group, David, you got like 10 days left.
Yeah.
What can you give them?
Well, look, I think, I actually think the other night when she was on the town hall, and obviously she's amplifying it now, she said something that is meaningful to these voters. They're very much concerned about what's going on in their lives, particularly in the economy. And when she said, he's going to come to the office with an enemies list, I'm going to come with a to-do list, and your concerns are going to be on that list of issues to work on. I think that is a contrast that she needs to really, really hit hard in the final days of the campaign, because yes, Trump, he's fundamentally anti-democratic in certain ways, and I mean about democracy, and he's sort of signaled what he's going to do. He's going to get rid of the special counsel. He's going to pardon the January 6th mob and so on. What does this have to do with people's lives? What does his vengeance have to do with their day-to-day lives? And I think that contrast is really powerful, and I would lean into it every single day.
Other David?
Yeah, I like the analogy. I like the to-do list analogy. You know what's been number one on Kamala Harris's to-do list? Secure the border for the past 4 years. So the number one item on her to-do list, secure the border, failed. F, gets an F grade. So let's make that contrast. She's been in office for over 1,400 days. There's lots of things on the to-do list that she still has to do. So why should we give her another chance? Why is she hasn't been able? Anderson asked the great question, what have you been doing for the past 4 years, and why haven't you started yesterday? When she's talking about securing the border, she said, well, we're going to do all these things. We're going to introduce this legislation. We're going to do this. And Anderson said, well, why didn't you do these things? Why didn't you do the EO? You could have done all these things. And she didn't have an answer. She did have an answer. Axe, as you said it was a word salad answer to that. And look, I do agree with Axe. The people who speak, the candidate that speaks to people's concerns, their economic concerns, that makes them feel like they're being heard, is going to be rewarded with those swing voters here in the end days.
Yeah, let me say a couple of things. I did say one answer of hers was a word salad, but boy, if this is a competition of who is speaking in word salads, I invite everybody to go and watch a Trump rally. I mean, that isn't the basis on which
this is. It's a weave, not a word salad, it's a weave.
It's more like sweet greens, David Urban, or chopped, to be completely fair.
But also, on issues like the border, I mean, she did say what she has been doing, what she would do. She's the vice president, of course, not the president. But she's got a valid point. There was a very, very substantive bill on the floor, and Trump killed it. So because he wanted the issue. So that's I get the talking point. You guys want to look backwards, but she'd be smart to push forward and talk about the things she's going to do that are going to be positive in people's lives. When she is president of the United States, Dave, we don't talk about the Pence years, okay? Vice presidents don't make decisions. Presidents make decisions. And the question is, what would she do as president? And that's what she needs to focus on.
Yeah, but actually, you can't have it both ways. You can't have, Joe Biden there saying she was a partner with me. We did all these things together. You can't claim that she was the last person in the room helping make decisions, and then no, she had no input whatsoever what was going on.
I've been
she
in
wasn't
the-
there. It has to
I've
be
been-
either or. You got to pick.
I've been around those rooms, and I saw Joe Biden was the last person in the room often with Barack Obama, but Barack Obama made the decision, and he'd say, "Thank you very much for your advice. I'll go in the direction I want to go." Only the president makes decisions, Dave, and I think the way Donald Trump's behaving in the final stanzas of this campaign should give people some concern about how he's going to make decisions.
So let me hit that point right there, because ABC News and Ipsos have a different poll out today, which has a kind of a startling top line number. Gary Langer, the pollster there, noted that 49%, about half of those polled, see Donald Trump as a fascist, which is sort of a stunningly high number. So David Axelrod, when you see this, does this maybe explain, and this, by the way, this poll was taken before the John Kelly comments came out with, you hear him on tape saying that Donald Trump said he saw some good things, that Hitler did some good things. Does this explain why the Harris campaign is maybe trying to go down this path in the waning days?
Look, I think that there are Republicans who may disagree with her on some issues, who have real concerns about whether Donald Trump believes in the fundamental tenets of democracy, the so-called Nikki Haley Republicans, and I think they believe that there are enough of those to tip the balance in some of these states like Pennsylvania, where the suburban area is going to play so big. I think that there's value in that, but I really do think you have to tie what Trump's obsessions are with the concerns of everyday people, and ask yourself, is he going to wake up every morning and thinking about my problems or his own? I really think that's fundamentally the distinction they want to make at the end. So it's important to raise these issues, and I care about them deeply, but I've said many times here and elsewhere, if you're talking about democracy over the dinner table, it's probably because you don't have to worry about the cost of the food on your dinner table.
David Urban?
Yeah, look, I agree with Axe 100%. Look at that. Cats and dogs sleeping together. Shock the world. I think
but
that
not being
labeling and name. Exactly. There you go. The labels will have little impact at the end of the day when kitchen table issues are top of the list in every list. The economy, inflation, immigration, those are things that are affecting people's lives every day. That's what's going to move people in these last few days. The candidate who speaks best to that, who people feel that understands their concerns, their issues, their wants, their fears. Those are the people. That's where the people are going to flock to that candidate in these closing days. So to Axe's point, labeling is somewhat useful. Negative campaigning we see does move numbers, but someone who has an answer for those economic issues is going to be the key.
I will say that is the platform on which most fascists get elected. So that's famous fascists have run and said, "I'm going to make the economy work better," and then all the other things come along with it that they don't talk about when they're running.
Well, on that cheery note, David Axelrod.
I'll read you.
David Urban.
Well, I was just going to say, listen, if we're going to look at labels, I'll read you the definition of a socialist, and then we can just call Kamala Harris a socialist from here to the end of the campaign, because she fits squarely within the definition of a socialist. So
we'll do political theory 101 next time around. David Urban, David Axelrod, thanks to both of you.